Hey everybody, welcome to another off-season edition of Krown Countdown U. My name's Ryan Sullivan, his name's Andrew Wadden. Today we got a special location. We're shooting live from the illegal CIS warehouse.
A lot of illegal paraphernalia surrounding us right now, kind of like this one right here. Yeah, that's a violation. Or how about this one right here? Whoa, sorry, that's a violation.
That's a violation, yeah.
Although we do have 10 Saskatchewan Husky helmets here.
Yeah.
No violation there.
No, I don't think so. I just found a giant bag of 2014 Mac Vanier Cup champion hats.
Oh, what are those doing here? Those are supposed to be shipped off to Africa.
I mean, no, I didn't.
Yeah.
No, I didn't.
Let's just get on to the story.
I'm going to read my story.
Yeah.
The National CFL Combine goes down this month with the top CFL prospects from across CIS taking part in the drills and the testing. The three-day event takes place at the Varsity Centre and Park Hyatt Hotel in Toronto starting on Friday, March 27th. Some of the standouts participating include All-Canadian D lineman Darryl Wadd from Western, receivers Nick Dembski of Manitoba and Addison Richards from Regina, plus CIS rushing leader Dylan Campbell of Laurier. There are also regional combines being held in Montreal, Edmonton, and Toronto.
Who is the next CIS product to make an impact in the NFL? Well, it very well could be Suk Chung of the Calgary Dinos or Ron O'Mara of the St. FX X-Men, as both players have been invited to participate at the regional NFL Combine in Arizona on March 21st. Following in the footsteps of former ex-linebacker Hinak Muamba, O'Mara is hoping to impress his way into the NFL draft. The 6'2", 240-pound native of Quebec was a CIS second-team All-Canadian and AUS Defensive Player of the Year in 2013. Chung is expected to be a top 10 pick in the upcoming CFL draft. The offensive lineman out of BC was voted as a second-team All-Canadian in 2014. Both Chung and O'Mara will attend the CFL National Combine as well.
We now welcome Lee Barrett from CanadaFootballChat.com to talk a bit of Combine and a bit of recruiting. Lee, let's first of all take a look on the Combine sign with O'Mara and Suk Chung going off to an NFL regional. How much upside do these guys have, and what sort of chance do they have in terms of breaking through the pack?
I think the format will really bode well for both players. I think Ron O'Mara does great in the gym. I mean, he's an athlete. He'll jump right out of the gym. He'll show very well in the testing that they do. As far as Suk Chung, I think that as long as he gets a good start, because it's a whole different ball game. I mean, there's no yard off the ball and stuff like that. So I think it's important for him to get a good start, to get that confidence early in the combine.
As for the CFL Combine coming up, it was a strange draft year last year. With the redshirt situation and the NCAA Canadians really being out of the mix. They're back into the mix. How does that change things in terms of who's strong and who's weak in terms of CIS versus NCAA?
It just adds some depth to the draft, especially in the top half. It'll be interesting to see how a guy like Shaquille Lawrence out of UNLV does. And it'll be interesting to see, as it always is, whether the kids that are high and maybe NFL draftees go, like a Tyler Varga and a Brett Boyko. So it'll be interesting. It's nice to have that mix back in it. It was missed last year.
Let's switch over to recruiting now. And of course, we heard all the noise about Michael O'Connor coming up from Penn State to UBC. We've talked about the Alberta Five going to York. Who in your mind has also scored big in terms of recruiting in the CIS? Those two are the two headline stories. But who else has been in the mix for you?
Well, for sure. And if it wasn't Laval, it'd be a headline story, but it might be the best recruiting class ever. They've got 10 of our CFC 100 kids in their class, and it's only 21 on the board, and 10 of them are our top 100. 7 of those are defensive players. It might be the best defensive class ever. And, maybe Acadia out east has finally found their quarterback out of Calgary, Hunter Gunnard out of Calgary Centennial. And York and Waterloo, like you mentioned with York, even Waterloo has made some splashes that, hopefully brings them up in the pack in the way.
Lee Barrett, CanadaFootballChat.com. Thanks very much for this.
Much appreciated having me on, Jim.
At one time, the York Lions were known as the York Yeomen. Last season, it was more like the York Nomen. Just a second. Especially on offense, where supporters of the red and white had to wait until the final game of the year for a touchdown. Cue one of the hardest working coaches in the game, Warren Craney. You see, the head coach of the Yorkies also has been moonlighting as the boss of the Canadian national junior team. As a result, Craney's relationship with some of the top players on Team Canada has resulted in a recruiting coup, the Alberta Five. Heading to don the red and white next season are receivers Colton Hunchak and Jacob Janke. Hunchak was ranked the number 9 recruit in the nation for 2015. Quarterback Brett Hunchak, brother of Colton, is also headed to Scarborough, while linebackers Jacob Jakubek and Jacob Butler round out the Alberta Five. The good people at York documented the recruiting trip. Here's a look at the video. To see the entire 3rd and Goal York football series, make sure to check out the team's YouTube page.
Big day for this program. 5 big guys. I'm vaccinated.
We are here to seal the deal, sign 5 of the biggest boys in Canada West to come play football for us, and couldn't be more excited. Been a great day, a great process, and I know Coach Craney's totally excited. It's going to be a game changer for us. I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do when they show up for us at camp this fall.
This means everything. This is why I decided to come to this program, because of a day like this. You know, in coming here, we knew how hard it was going to be. Every year we've worked hard and brought in great kids and, you know, made additions to our coaching staff. Coach Como coming on board, Coach KP coming on board last year. And you know what, it's time. And we went out there and we identified what we thought were the best recruits in the country. And they're from Alberta. You know what, we decided to throw everything at it and try and get these kids to come east and make Toronto their home. And words can't describe how happy I am right now.
We're now talking with Warren Craney, the head coach of the York Lions, who came up with a yeoman's effort in terms of recruiting, landing the Alberta Five. Warren, thanks for coming on Crown Countdown U.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Wow, this is a big score for you guys, and I think it's even bigger considering some of the turbulence that your program has gone through over the last few years. But does this signal a real turning of the corner for the York program?
I think so. I think that, in all honesty, and looking at it, I think this is the break we needed. When the season ended last year, coming off an 0-8 season for a multitude of reasons, you know, we really sat down and we're looking at recruiting and how things had to change. And we said, you know what, we need to go all in. And we started to look at the national, started looking recruiting nationally. Obviously, these kids were on our radar for a couple of years. And we said, you know what, we're just going to go all in with these kids, hoping we'd land one of them.
But you make your own breaks, don't you? And all this time you've been working with the national junior team, Team Canada. Obviously, that gave you the opportunity to work on building some relationships. How important was that for the equation of recruiting for you?
You know what, it's definitely has its value. Whether you're coaching a provincial team or a national team, you can't control the relationships you build with these kids. And you know, we were fortunate enough, I think, having the tournament in Kuwait. Definitely we were, and not just with these kids, our whole coaching staff had a solid relationship with all 45 of those guys, having training camp in Italy and then doing the tournament in Kuwait. And we really, really grew as a family. And, you know, when we returned from Kuwait, we just continued to develop that relationship with those kids.
When you're at the bottom of a conference, though, how do you change the message as you go out into the field in terms of recruiting? Because just getting that turnaround is probably the most difficult thing. How do you reach these kids if you're a team that had to wait to the end of the season to score your first touchdown?
Yeah, you know what? It was basically, I think, what we were selling, what we were using as our recruiting point is selling us as a coaching staff. You know, I came to York for a reason. I knew it was going to be difficult. Bringing Kamau Peterson from Edmonton, my offensive line coach my offensive coordinator bringing him from Montreal, Mike Como. You know, I really believed in what we were doing. And we had to sell these kids our vision because, we couldn't sell them wins or losses. We couldn't sell them offensive prowess. We needed to sell them a vision of what we were trying to accomplish. And on top of that, we're really looking for we were looking for kids that were really going to blaze their own trail. Kids that weren't afraid. A kid like Colton Hunchak, Brent Hunchak, and Jacob Janke and Jacob Butler and Jacob Jackiebeck, those kids, each one of them on their own, think they can turn this program around. So all 5 of them together, we're just excited to see what happens with that. And it was, I think the biggest thing is kids that weren't afraid to take that chance. They really believe that they're going to help us turn this ship around.
Well, Warren, great work in the offseason in recruiting. I know that you've probably got a few more announcements along the way. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Well, the other shoe has dropped at McGill after Ron Hilaire was appointed head coach of the Redmen last month. His former co-head coach, Pat Boyce, has left the program. Former Laval standout QB, Heck Crichton winner, and McGill position coach, Benoit Groux, fills the vacated post and will assume the duties of offensive coordinator. Groux has served senior posts with CJEP teams over the last few seasons. He was the offensive coordinator with the Bishops Gators in 2010 and 2011. Former Rouge AOR running back Sebastian Levesque will also join the McGill staff as an offensive assistant. There's still one position to fill for Hilaire as Jerome Erdman has left the special teams post to share the coaching duties with the BCFC VI Raiders. Keeping with the RSEQ, still no word on who will be covering the conference's game of the week in 2015. Radio Canada has the first right of refusal for another year, but there has been indications that they would drop coverage based on budget cuts at the public broadcaster. Rumors persist that RDS will be the likely home of RSEQ games in 2015 and beyond, but nothing has been confirmed by the conference as of yet.
To some Canadian NCAA news now. After a long and tedious search that lasted till the last week of February, Simon Fraser University in Burnaby, BC introduced former BC Lion Kelly Bates as its new head coach of the football program. Bates spent the last 2 years working in the CFL as the BC Lions running backs coach. The Saskatchewan product also spent time playing in the pros as a player, winning 2 Grey Cups as a member of the BC Lions in 2006 and 2011. This is Bates' first head coaching position.
It's just amazing that my family gets to continue to live in the atmosphere and environment we're in, to have so much family who surrounds us and lives right next to us, and I get paid to go up the hill every day and be a football coach. It's amazing. It's pretty funny to be in this situation, to be the guy being asked it, because it was a question I asked so many American coaches that would come up from the U.S. to coach in the CFL. How do you come up from a 4-down game with a shorter field, the width isn't the same, the ball's a little different, the hash marks are different, you have the yard, and obviously the big one with one less player on the field. And you always, 9 times out of 10, get the same answer from them. It's football.
Well, fortunately, Ryan has found a use for these banned in the OUA Guelph Griffins helmets. Unfortunately for Ryan, no mere helmet, whatever, is going to save him from the tragedy that went on top of his head there this week. Yeah. We should probably hide these McMaster.
I was going to say, we have a McMaster guest coming up next. The old championship hats that they did not win.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Get rid of those. Yeah. Can't get rid of this haircut, though. But we can get rid of you for a minute when we go to commercial. Come right back. You're watching Krown Countdown, Hugh.
Krown Produce secures produce locally and from around the world for Canadian retailers. Krown Produce is also proud to secure sponsorship of University football on Shaw. Krown Produce, supporting Canadian retailers and Canadian amateur football.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. It's time again for the Roundtable portion. And for this, as always, we welcome in Jim Mullen on the far side, Gord Randall in the middle, and live via Skype, we have Marshall Ferguson, quarterback of the McMaster Marauders. Marshall, how are you, sir?
Not bad, Ryan. Thanks for having me, guys.
Hey, pleasure to have you on the show. All right, let's start things out. Who makes the best gear. I know what you're thinking. It's Indochino, actually. It's a nice jacket, but we want to talk about the players' gear, and we're going to start with Jim Mullen.
Well, I thought on a day where we've got illegal gear and then we've got a load of Saskatchewan gear behind us, it might be a good idea to talk about other gear like jerseys and pants and whatnot.
It's fitting.
And who makes the best gear from my position? I would say Under Armour makes the best gear. In terms of being able to do color matches, patterns, fonts, numbers, they can mix it up. Nike is a little cookie cutter for my liking. Oregon leads. Everybody else is kind of a half measure behind them. And the one that I really am not in favor of right now is Adidas. I know Adidas makes a couple of good uniforms out there that are pretty basic. Both Alberta and Regina have them in the Canada West. Unfortunately, the color match isn't there, so whenever they play, it looks like they're playing an inter-squad game now. But with the St. Mary's Huskies, with that old Adidas that they're wearing, those pants look like they belong to the Latvian European handball team with those 3 stripes going down the side. I mean, and the Queens, don't even get me started on that.
Yeah, well, Queens is a tough task for an apparel sponsor given their demands of having to be a gold primary, and I totally understand that, although I've said to you in the past, I think Russell did an outstanding job with it back when they had that contract. You kind of get to the crux of the issue with Adidas where I think when they keep it simple, they can do pretty well, and we've seen it on University of Toronto has pretty sharp uniforms that are Adidas. McGill, the same thing, and they're just basic navy and white, red and white, but there's also, you get good Adidas and bad Adidas. And when I was at Queens, we switched from Russell to Adidas, and we got these really yucky polyester ones that we're looking at them, and then we're looking at what Notre Dame's wearing in the States, which is also Adidas, and it's night and day. Like, it was no comparison. It was really sharp looking there. Ours looked like knockoff soccer jerseys, and they felt just about the same. I remember one year I couldn't pull my jersey over the corner of my shoulder pads. It was awful. In terms of apparel, I've gotten the chance to wear Russell, the chance to wear Adidas, the chance to wear Under Armour. I don't have a lot of experience with Nike, but out of those 3, Under Armour did a heck of a job with our stuff at UBC. I really like their stuff because of the way they started and what they first marketed as an apparel sponsor. Their stuff is really stretchy, so it's good and form-fitting, but has some movement in it, and I really like the look. I will tell you who does the worst gear though, and that's Supercuts.
It was Select Hair Design, all right? Let's quit it with the hair jokes. I mean, Jim he can't even jump in on this conversation.
First, I have to say Jim's facial hair beats any of us with the hair on our head, so that's a win. But in terms of jerseys, uniforms, quality, branding, I'm partial to Nike because I've had an experience to work pretty closely with them. I do agree with Jim. They are a little bit cookie cutter in the sense that they really don't make any special designs for individual universities outside of Oregon. But I think any athlete would agree that the comfort and the fit and the material is much more important than the logos or the numbers, the cut, all of that kind of thing. The one that blew me away, that was my favorite jersey ever, which is actually hanging up behind me, was the old jerseys we had during our Vanier Cup runs in 2011, 2012 in McMaster, because you would try to put them on after the game and they would be skin tight without pads on. And every time we did it, we said, how the heck do we put these over our pads during the game? And then you would strap them on game day and they felt very, very comfortable. And then this year at McMaster, we actually decided during our homecoming and throughout the playoffs that we would go back to the maroon pants that we hadn't worn throughout the season. We switched to some dark gray ones. And those maroon pants fit like a glove because they're so worn in, they're so comfortable. So I think we had a really great experience at McMaster with Nike gear, but Under Armour does a heck of a job. I've seen those UBC jerseys. I've seen some of the other ones from around the league, and I definitely think they have a great product as well.
All right, let's switch things up a little bit. We talked to Warren Krown a little earlier in the show. Let's touch on coaching, and for the last few monthly episodes, we've touched on the Blake Nill and the impact here out west. What's the most impactful non-Nill coaching move? We're going to start with Gord.
Okay, well, I'm going to start a little bit off the board here, and I'm going to pick a coach who's actually technically going into his second season in Mickey Donovan at Concordia. And he's a guy that got hired at the end of February last year, didn't get a full recruiting cycle in, and this year has made some pretty serious noise in the recruiting ranks, including a couple of coups from south of the border. He's brought in a linebacker from Texas by the name of Rudy Tornero. He's now brought in an offensive lineman from Ohio by the name of Jeff King, and his coup d'etat, his big piece de resistance, if you will, I know I'm using a lot of French phrases when talking about Americans, but is Trenton Miller, who's a quarterback originally from Buffalo, New York. At one point was with the University of Southern Florida Bulls, then was a JUCO transfer guy. Now he's somehow gotten into Concordia, and I don't know what the connection is there, but nonetheless, much overshadowed in the Michael O'Connor news out here on the West Coast was this kid who maybe not quite the pedigree of a Michael O'Connor, and he's actually American himself, but another big-time guy coming up from the States that has a chance to make an instant impact in Concordia, which is a team that's already coming off of a pleasant surprise of a season on the football field.
Marshall, out to you.
I'll go a little bit off the mat, maybe Chris Bertoya. He's a guy who, you look at a program that's struggling, and they could have gone a lot of different directions with their choice. Rolly Webster, their athletic director, could have gone with a running gun, 5 wide, spread them out and try and just huck it and try and win some games that way. He decided to go for consistent alumni running game, ground and pound. It remains to be seen whether or not they can recruit the offensive lineman to be able to put into action the plan that I'm sure Chris will have once he's there at Waterloo. But I think that that's a really good step forward for their program to get someone who's consistent alumni, knows the campus, wants to be involved, wants to stay, and can build kind of a consistent ground game.
For me, it's Mike Gibson in Regina with the Regina Rams. For the last 31 years, it's been Frank McChrystal's team. And I think this can go one of two ways. Either this can be very good or very bad, because guys coming from the CFL or even from the NCAA don't necessarily know what is involved in terms of being a CIS head coach. It's a lot different. It's a very different creature than any other type of football on the continent. Gibson's going to be challenged in a number of areas in terms of being chief cook and bottle washer, and it will also be interesting to see what happens with that trademark Regina offense that likes to throw 3-1 or even in some games 4-1. This is going to be an interesting experiment to watch with Mike Gibson at the University of Regina.
All right, now the CIS tried something very interesting this past weekend. Marshall, we're going to throw this out to you. They combined their basketball and hockey championships into the same weekend. Was it a win for them? Was it a loss? Was it a push? What are your thoughts?
For the OUA, it might have been a win because they won 3 of the 4 major championships. But in terms of the entire country and being on Sportsnet nationally, I think that it does some good in the sense that we gain this mass exposure in the moment at the time that our greatest teams are playing in the greatest moments, the highest pressure. But there's a lot of games that go uncovered. I mean, there was I covered the CIS men's basketball championships at Ryerson this weekend, and Ottawa and Bishops played on Thursday evening in front of an insane group of fans that came down from Bishops. The game got sent to overtime, ended up being Ottawa winning by 6 in overtime, but Bishops was not a team that was expected to hang in, and they ended up making Ottawa shoot 1 of 14 from the 3. And that would have been a great game to have as a national product and to have be exposed and to show people that, it doesn't just have to be our championship games that you have to cover in order to show that there is great sport throughout this country in the CIS.
Well, if it's a win-loss or a tie, I think I'd call it a tie. One of the reasons why it comes up in my estimation is I think Sportsnet did a good job considering how many games they had to cover and how they had to cover it in 4 different regions. I thought the play-by-play was solid, and I thought the support staff, especially Brad Fay in the studio, was solid. But in terms of piling 30 hours into one weekend, I'm not sure if you're doing any of the championships justice. And the lesson that I think that we can take away from this for football is that there's an idea floating out there of a national series of quarterfinals where they want to put 4 games on that are national playoff games in one day. And I think that is an idea that shouldn't have any legs in terms of this idea of putting 12 to 15 hours of football on in one day. People aren't going to sit down there and watch it and commit themselves to it. And also what that does is it takes away from the importance of the Yates Cup, of the Hardy Cup, of the Dunsmore Cup, and of the Loney Bowl.
And certainly when you're putting quarterfinals on TV instead of national championships, relatively speaking, there's nothing on the line. And I just, the fact that it's the same sport all day long, I mean, I would suspect that you'll see with the ratings from this last Sunday that you lost viewers and you rarely had a viewer that watched all 4 championships. And I think the football would be hard-pressed to even match what we see out of this weekend because basketball, both sides on the basketball draw are very OUA-centric. In fact, I think both finals were between OUA combatants. And then with hockey, it's hockey. I mean, it's Canada. We can't get around it. Despite the fact that the CIS is probably 3rd or 4th in the pecking order in the hockey hierarchy in this country, it's still hockey. When you're talking about football, you're talking about one sport all day long. You're talking about, relatively speaking, not as consequential of a game. And you're talking about having to ask your major markets in the country to potentially watch a game between a Saskatoon-based team and an Edmonton-based team. It's not... I just don't think that it's set up to sell well.
I think this was set up as a really good drive-by for the casual viewer, but I think there needed to be some more promotional flags put in the field.
All right, gentlemen, quick hits. We're going to start with Jim. 30 seconds or less, something that we haven't touched on that you would like to. Go.
Zach Olenek, he's going to be on Big Brother Canada. We've just found this out as we hit the studio here. You got to represent the quarterback for the University of Regina Rams on a big network TV show.
Mr. Randall, what's your handle?
Well, we were talking about, nice.
Yeah,
we were talking
good,
about
right?
design earlier on in the show. I just wanted to let people know I've heard that UBC is going to be getting new uniforms this upcoming season, so keep your eyes peeled for those.
BC on the helmet, from what I understand.
Very similar to the UC on the Calgary helmet. Coincidence?
Very nice. The University of British Columbians representing. Marshall, out to you.
Yeah, my final comment will just be about Sportsnet Championship weekend. I think it was very well done. I asked for feedback from a lot of people since I wasn't able to watch the actual championships because I was covering men's basketball, and they were all extremely happy about how it went. But I think they were all happy with the fact that they were getting to actually watch things on television that they're not really used to seeing on national TV. But they don't realize that it's so great to see it, but it's going to be really quiet and almost non-existent on television for the next 51 weeks. And it's almost like if a log falls in the woods, doesn't make any noise. Well, if a sport is played and it's not on national television, does it exist, right? I think that's a question we'll have to look at. And I would like to see it spread out a little bit more and maybe the championships promoted a bit more to be marquee events so people want to tune in.
Very well said. And for my final quick hit, kids out there, if you're watching this show and you look into your wallet on a Sunday and you see a $10 bill and some change, think to yourself, what can I do with that? Get anything else but a haircut. This is what happens when you spend $10 and change on your head.
Also, use an actual mirror as a mirror. Clearly the football helmet doesn't work.
Yeah, and we can't say whose helmet that was, or can we? Is that
Guelph.
Okay, we can? Okay, we can say that. Guelph. All right, there you go. That does it for all of us here at Krown Countdown U. Thank you so much, Marshall Ferguson, for joining us from the McMaster Marauders. For Jim Mullen on the far side with the very nice Fu Manchu, Gord Randall in the middle, Andrew Wadden earlier in the show, I'm Ryan Sullivan, and we'll see you in a month.